You know, some leaders, they rise as heroes, only to watch over an era of absolute decay. Well, this is the story of Jacob Zuma, a man who literally fought for his nation's freedom, and then was accused of selling out its entire future. So let's get into it. Let's uncover how a celebrated hero became the architect of his nation's downfall.
And this right here, this really captures the whole paradox of the Zuma's story, doesn't it? On one side, you have the celebrated freedom fighter, and on the other, the man at the very center of what a judicial commission would later call a systematic conspiracy to basically redirect state resources for personal gain. So the big question is, how on earth did the man on the left become the man on the right?
To really get Zuma's rise to power, you have to remember the political climate at the time. He came in right after Thabo Mbeki, who was often seen as, well, distant and kind of autocratic. And he also followed a really short, stable, totally scandal-free interim presidency by Kgalema Motlanthe. Zuma was the complete opposite. His populist appeal was a massive contrast, and he just swept into office promising change and a real connection to the people.
And you know, in the beginning, there was some real hope. I mean, his administration completely reversed the devastating HIV/AIDS denialism of his predecessor, a move it's credited with actually raising life expectancy. Social grants for the poor were expanded, and on the world stage, South Africa joined the powerful BRICS economic alliance. That was a huge diplomatic win. So, what went wrong? I mean, how did it all fall apart? Well, to find the answer, we have to look back. Because the scandals that would eventually define his presidency, they didn't just pop up in the president's office. No, the seeds were planted long before, casting this shadow that, it turns out, he could never really escape.
Right, so this part covers what many call his original sins. We're talking about two massive legal battles that, for a lot of people, really defined Zuma's character years before he even took the top job: a massive corruption case and a deeply, deeply personal rape trial.
Okay, first up, the arms deal. Back in 1999, South Africa signed this enormous R30 billion contract to modernize its military. But almost immediately, the whole deal was just swamped with allegations of bribery and corruption on a massive scale. And whose name was right there in the middle of it all? Jacob Zuma's.
Think about this number for a second. 783. That's how many separate, illegal payments the state alleged Zuma received through his financial advisor, Schabir Shaik, who, by the way, was later convicted for it. That one number just puts the sheer scale of these allegations into a really stark perspective.
And the legal fight that followed? Well, it was nicknamed the Stalingrad strategy, basically a war of attrition, just dragging things out in the courts forever. The charges were first laid way back in 2005. Then they were controversially dropped right before he became president in 2009, only to be ruled irrational years later and then brought back again in 2018. It was a nearly 2-decade-long saga of delays and appeals.
And at the exact same time all this was happening, another storm was brewing. In 2005, Zuma was charged with raping Fezakile Kuzwayo, who was known to the public as Kwezi. Now, she wasn't a stranger. She was the daughter of a fellow anti-apartheid activist, which made the whole accusation incredibly personal and just politically explosive. During the trial, Zuma actually admitted to having unprotected sex with Kwezi, who he knew was HIV positive. When the lawyers questioned him about it, he made this absolutely infamous statement, claiming that taking a shower could reduce the risk of HIV transmission. I mean, the comment was just shocking, especially coming from a guy who used to be the head of the National AIDS Council.
In the end, he was acquitted. The judge accepted his claim that the sex was consensual. But even in victory, his character was just ripped to shreds by the court. Listen to the judge's own words. He condemned Zuma's judgment, which shows that even though he won the case, his reputation was just deeply, deeply tarnished. So you see, these original sins, they weren't just background noise. They really set the stage for everything that was about to happen. With those legal battles seemingly behind him, Zuma's presidency began. And with it, a new, much more insidious kind of corruption started to take hold. A systematic project to basically hollow out the state from the inside. And there's a name for this: state capture. The Zondo Commission, which was the huge judicial inquiry set up to investigate all this, gave this damning official definition. See, it wasn't just random acts of corruption. It was a deliberate, systematic project designed to repurpose the state itself for private enrichment. So how'd they do it? How do you actually capture a state? Well, the method was pretty simple and just devastatingly effective. First, you put your loyalists in charge of all the key institutions. We're talking the Treasury, state-owned companies, law enforcement.
Then you weaken the very bodies that are meant to keep an eye on you. And finally, you just open the taps and start diverting contracts and resources to your network.
And at the absolute heart of this network was a single family, the Guptas. These were businessmen who built an exceptionally close relationship with President Zuma and his family. And their influence, according to a ton of whistleblowers and investigations, became so powerful they could allegedly dictate government business and even pick who was in the cabinet. I mean, the sheer audacity of this whole project was just laid bare in the testimony of Msebi's Jonas. He was the deputy finance minister at the time, and he stated under oath that the Gupta family offered him the top job, Minister of Finance, along with a bribe of $600 million. He turned them down.
Look, this wasn't some abstract political game. This wasn't a victimless crime. The systematic looting of the state had a real, tangible, and absolutely devastating cost for the country and for its citizens. Let's look at the numbers.
We'll start with a personal, symbolic figure. The public was outraged, and rightly so, to learn that millions in state funds had been used for upgrades to Zuma's private home. We're talking a swimming pool, an amphitheater. The public protector found these were improper and ordered him to repay 7.8 million rand.
But that Nkandla scandal, that was just a drop in the ocean. Now look at this number. Nedbank estimated the total cost of state capture during Zuma's second term was a staggering 470 billion rand. That's an almost incomprehensible amount of money that represents lost jobs, failed services, and stolen opportunities for millions of people.
And you can see the long-term damage right here in the national debt. When Zuma took office in 2009, the debt was a totally manageable 28% of GDP. By the time he left in 2018, it had ballooned to over 50%. That is a burden that the country is going to be paying off for generations to come. An economy can only take so much punishment. As all the evidence mounted and the economic damage got deeper and deeper, the tide finally started to turn. Civil society, the media, and eventually Zuma's own party decided that enough was enough. And when the end came, it came fast. In December 2017, Cyril Ramaphosa narrowly won the ANC presidency. Less than 2 months later, the party recalled Zuma, forcing him to resign. But his defiance continued, and in 2021, he was actually jailed for refusing to testify at the commission investigating him. And tragically, his imprisonment sparked riots that cost over 300 lives and another 50 billion rand in damages. So, after years of testimony from hundreds and hundreds of witnesses, the Zondo Commission delivered its final report, and its findings were just damning. It concluded that, yes, state capture did happen on an extensive scale with Zuma at the center of it, and that his own party, the ANC, had allowed it to happen.
In the end, Zuma's presidency left South Africa with hollowed-out institutions, a crippled economy, and a deeply fractured society. The betrayal was profound. And it leaves behind this monumental question. After a lost decade, how does a nation even begin to rebuild?